New NBA Plus Stuff podcast in the description. Talked about the Pistons, what's going on with them and their losing. And then I gave my opinion on NBA 2K18 and if I think it's actually a good game or not. And now we're going to talk about the Miami Heat, who I was decently excited for going into the season, and I think I'm still excited for them overall. The biggest question with Miami, to me, is the difference between them currently being 13 and 14 and perhaps a little better just Hassan Whiteside's health? Is there anything else to it? Well, Whiteside's had some knee problems. He's played in about 15 games this season, and even then he hasn't been able to play in the mid to low 30s where he was last season. And, he's still been pretty damn good, but I do think he's just been a little worse this season. And defensively, I think this is where Miami's really feeling it, because right now their defensive rating is 107. Last season it was 106.7, and that's after they went on that huge run. So if we're just looking at the huge run specifically, I have to assume it would be even lower than that 106. I think the other area where they're really feeling the lack of Whiteside is on the offensive boards. Because, number one, they're only putting up 104.5 points per 100, which is 25th in the league. And in terms of offensive rebounds per game, this season, Miami's grabbing about 7.8 offensive boards. And last season, they grabbed about 10.5 offensive rebounds a game. So, yeah, that's going to hurt your offense. I think it's a combination, one, of, Whiteside not being in there as much, and even when he is in there, he's not able to really be himself. But another difference would be that they don't have Rodney Magruder, and he grabbed about almost 1.5 offensive boards a game for them last season as like a shooting guard. So when you have a team like Miami that doesn't have a big-time scorer, getting those couple extra offensive rebounds a game can be huge, so I have to assume Whiteside comes back. He's going to give them those opportunities, but also he should make them better defensively. He's still a good rim protector, and they're a better defensive team when he's in the game. Even if, defensively, Whiteside does still have some problems, but overall he's a positive. But I think if we look at the roster and try to think about, if Whiteside comes back, what could they do? Well, there's Kelly Olynyk, and there could be times when you roll with Olynyk at power forward next to Hassan Whiteside to be a stretch four. The one thing with Olynyk is he's not the type of guy who's just going to hoist up three-pointers all the time. He takes about, at the most, 3 a game. That was when he was with the Celtics playing 20-some minutes, and there were some times when he'll pass up open threes, but he's also shooting over 40% from 3 this season, so maybe the confidence is a little more there, and Whiteside and Olynyk together, that could be something. Of course, there's still James Johnson, who you would think could hurt spacing, but because he's such a good ball handler as the power forward, that if you initiate offense through him, then the defense has to care about him, and as a result, the floor is still pretty spread. So there can be a lot of versatility at those the power forward center positions, because there are also times when Olynyk can play center and you could have Johnson off of him, or I don't know if there's any real small ball 4 options outside of Justice Winslow. If you wanted to get really crazy, maybe like Dion Waiters, but that might be a little too nuts. There's still some decent versatility up front regardless. Now, if we can look at some other things for Miami, I think Dion and his threes not going in is probably a story. Because last season, during that huge run, Dion was a big part of it because he was making the shots that he typically shoots that are sometimes not always the best shots. And, he's attempting 6 threes a game right now, which is basically, actually it's higher than last season, so maybe his confidence is even a little too high. And they're simply not dropping, and we're 25 games into the season. At the 25 game mark, if the threes are not going in, that can be enough to where there can be some cause for concern on if Dion's shooting is just simply not going to be that effective for you. Now, he is still making about 2 a game, so it might just be a matter of shooting a little bit less threes if you're Dion, because, he can go off the bounce and do at least a couple of things in terms of finishing at the rim and potential floaters and maybe kicking it out to someone when the defense collapses. So maybe just not shooting as many threes would be a good look for Dion Waiters. Now, if we can just get to just how the team is playing, I mean, based on what I've seen, it does seem like they are still running a lot of the similar things that they would run last season, whether Whiteside's in the game or not, which is they just use all their ball handlers, between Dragic and Tyler Johnson and Dion and James Johnson. A lot of pick and rolls. I've seen some James Johnson isolations. I mean, he's second on the team in assists behind Goran Dragic. Now, the fact that Dragic is only at 4.5 assists, that could be some sort of cause for concern, but I just think the entire makeup of the team is just going to be a little more intact once Hassan Whiteside is back and healthy. I think until then, it's going to be basically where they are at now, 13 and 14, and some nights it looks really bad and other nights it looks really good, but ultimately they just they stay good enough to where they can still be in playoff contention, and then once Whiteside comes back, then I think they'll be pretty okay. Their pick and rolls are down this season by a little bit. This season they're at like 17% of their plays are pick and rolls. Last season it was around 19%. I think Whiteside has something to do with that. Now, if I can talk about Justice Winslow. In 2017, in the 18 games he played before he got injured, they were using him a lot as a ball handler in pick and rolls, and he was getting right up to around 4 assists a game. And even if he still really couldn't finish that well, it did seem like he was starting to build an offensive game around his defense. This season, it's been a little different. He's way down on pick and rolls as a ball handler. This season, he's at like 0.5 possessions a game where he handles the ball in a pick and roll, whereas in 2017, it was nearly up to like 4 possessions a game. So they're using him way differently, which is interesting because he's actually making his threes. Now, he's only taking 1.5 threes a game, but he is shooting 39%. So can Winslow play more of an off-ball role for these guys? Well, I mean, I would rather have Dragic and James Johnson dribble the ball over Winslow, definitely. But would I really have a problem with him taking away a couple of possessions here and there from Dion as well as Tyler Johnson? Not really. I think that can work because, I mean, Winslow's 21 years old, and he is the guy who you're banking a lot of your future on if you're Miami. So as a result, yeah, getting him a few possessions here and there I think would be a smart idea. It just seems like they're using him less offensively overall. I mean, he's shooting like half as many shots as he shot in 2017, which, all right, given the field goal percentage, sure, that can make some sense, but also I hope they don't forget about him. I hope that he doesn't become just like this super low usage offensive player, because I think he has more potential than that. So, I mean, we'll just have to see what happens on that one. So yeah, basically with Miami, I think it's going to be an up and down season without Hassan Whiteside, and then if Whiteside is able to be in there healthy and able to get up to eventually his 33 minutes a game I think he was playing last season, and what he does as a rim protector, a rebounder on both sides, I think they'll end up being pretty decent. Now, the loss of Rodney Magruder does hurt him a little bit because he's like a 3-and-D player, and those guys are important, but, if Wayne Ellington keeps on making like 7 threes in a row or whatever the hell he did in like 2 games ago, or it might have been the last game, then they'll be okay anyway. So, Miami, they should still be good. Just a matter of Whiteside getting back. And then, once again, a new podcast in the description. Talked about the Pistons and they're losing. Talked about NBA 2K18.